Are you tired of the same old pro wrestling? Then check out the amazing action on Powerslam.tv, the biggest indie pro wrestling channel in the world. Get over 3,000 hours of the best pro wrestling events from over 100 of the biggest names in the industry from over 15 countries around the globe. Get your free trial today at Powerslam.tv.
And welcome everybody to a special episode of Glove Up or Shut Up right here on AngryMarks.com. My name is Peter H. I'm joined once again by my co-host from Omaha, Nebraska, Jared.
Well, we weren't planning to be back the week of Christmas because we had holiday plans, we had family plans, but John Jones had other plans.
Yeah, John Jones. Well, how do I put this mildly? He done screwed up.
Well, he done screwed everybody over, is what he done did.
Yeah, exactly. What happened was, for those who are living under a rock, the show that happens tonight in Vegas
does not happen in Vegas.
Moves to the great state of California.
On 1 week's notice, every fighter who already flew to Las Vegas had to get new accommodations.
And the problem is, now I have to go into this because it's kind of ludicrous in a sense, but I have to say it.
Well, there are three ludicrous things about it. There are no less than three.
Yes. Basically, he popped for the same he failed the drug test for the same thing he failed for in 2017 in July in California. But in theory, you can't fail for the same thing twice, so to speak. So the Nevada State Athletic Commission, 4 of the 5 commissioners, were on Christmas break, and they're not able to reconvene in time for a hearing before Saturday's show. So the UFC moved the show to California because, one, the venue was available. It's the Forum in Inglewood. And 2, he failed that test in 2017 in July in California, so they're familiar with it. Now, how it breaks down is, and this is what I read first when it first happened. I sent it to you off the air. I think the day it happened, where you think of a grain of sand, and you smash that grain of sand into 50 million pieces. One of those 50 million pieces was in his drug sample.
That was the explanation.
Now, that's what's called a pictogram, I think
picogram.
Picogram.
Pictogram is a video game, and John Jones kept calling it a pictogram because apparently he doesn't know the difference.
So, it moves to California.
And this is the ludicrous part. Well, the first of several ludicrous parts. They could have just moved his fight to California and left everybody else in Las Vegas. But because they moved the entire card, everybody that was already booked, like not just the fighters, but the fans going to Las Vegas who bought tickets, who bought hotel rooms, they're all fucked.
Now, if you watch the UFC embedded videos there was one where they broke the news to Gustafsson, saying that he popped the drug test, and the drug guru was there too.
Jeff Nowitzki, formerly of the U.S. Olympic Committee.
And basically explained the situation, and essentially Dana White said, we can move the fight to March, but it's not fair to you and it's not fair to John Jones. This is where I have a problem with this.
Who needs to be fair to John Jones after he flunked multiple tests for recreational drugs, performance-enhancing drugs, not to mention his past history of alcohol-related vehicular accidents? Who needs to be fair to him at this point?
Now, the Mauler was kind of calm in that video, and he wants to fight, and in the press conference we'll get to in a minute, he actually said, I don't care, he can be on rocket fuel, he's a cheater. He can be on rocket fuel, I'll still beat him. So, we have this show in California. Now, the point that really caught my eye, and it wasn't reported well at first, but
the taxes?
More people, yeah. Nevada's a no-income tax state, so fighters don't pay income tax on their winnings. Now they move to California, which is the highest state. 30% of the income tax is what they're being paid. Every fighter has to pay.
Well, no, you're wrong. I'm sorry, but it's a tiered bracket based on what you earn is the percentage you're taxed at. The more you earn, the higher the tax. So the 30% is only at the top.
But still, you're going from a state that charges nothing to a state that charges, it's the highest tax state in the country.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, all those fighters who were expecting a nice check at the end of their fights, win or lose, at UFC 232, is suddenly getting far less than they originally expected to, again, because they moved the entire card to California. This is infuriating to me and to the people. So many people are getting hosed here. The fighters are getting hosed because they have to pay the income tax. The fans are getting hosed because a lot of them aren't going to be able to make the trip after they already booked tickets and non-refundable airfare to Las Vegas. And there's just no reason they couldn't have held one fight in California, simulcast it to the arena in Las Vegas, and left all the rest of the fighters and all the rest of the fans there in Las Vegas. It's not even like it's a different time zone. It's the exact same time zone.
Another thing is the tickets that were bought for Vegas will not be honored in California.
Well, you could exchange them. You could return them and get new tickets. But who's going to go to California on that short of a notice?
And, the UFC, I was thinking, well, how much of a hit are they taking at the gate?
They're not. They sold out the Forum.
They sold out the Forum, but you're going from a gate where you were going to take home maybe $6 million because there's a lot more seats in the venue in Vegas than it was in Inglewood. The gate from Inglewood is going to be maybe $1 million. They're losing $5 million on this fight at the gate alone.
Well,
it's a slap in the face. It's
slap in the face is that they're bending over backwards to help John Jones. And I do not agree with this anymore. And we haven't even mentioned the fact that he also failed in August and September. He got popped 3 times in the last 5 months.
That came out after the announcement it was moved to California and the days leading up to the fight. It was revealed, yes, he did fail 2 other tests. So as I said, and Stevie, you can check the tapes on this for weeks, I said, you're rewarding him with the title opportunity.
Yeah, well, one of the best opinions I've heard on this whole debacle since we decided to tape this very late pre-UFC 232 show was the Observer Radio with Brian and Dave, where Dave said, I've been in this business almost 40 years, and you learn when some people are known to bullshit a little bit, and some people you don't really bullshit, but their memories change over time because they don't remember that well after so many years. And then you learn some people are just straight up dishonest. And basically at this point, his opinion is that nobody is being honest about this anymore. They are bending over backwards to let John Jones fight and pretending that they're not. And that's just straight up not honest. And if we're being very accurate about what's going on here with John Jones, he is cheating. He can claim that he still has Turinabol in his system from last year, but that doesn't pass the smell test. The reason it's showing up on his tests before the fight is because of the fact that he's cutting weight for the fight, which means whatever he was taking is now coming out in the drug test because he's cutting weight.
I did see something about a college football player having the same issue where he was failing tests a year after for the same thing. And you know what happened to him? They didn't let him play. The drug was still in his system.
That would be the correct course of action if we were to take USADA and the Athletic Commission and UFC seriously. They would just not have John Jones compete. They wouldn't move the fight to California to get around the fact that Nevada couldn't convene the rule on it. They would just not have the fight, period. You know, I don't always find Ali Abdelaziz to be the most credible person on the face of the earth, and I think that's putting it mildly, but when he says USADA is a fucking joke, I'm having a hard time disagreeing with him on that point, because they've got 2 different sets of rules for 2 different sets of people. John Jones and everybody else.
I'm going add another name to that list. How about the California State Athletic Commission?
Well, they've certainly bent over backwards to make this happen too, so they're no different. They're just as culpable as USADA.
And those who are wondering about the Nevada State Athletic Commission, I mean, this is setting up a war between Nevada and California from a commission standpoint. Nevada did do one thing. They allowed John Jones to withdraw his license application so that he could apply for the license in California, and they were able to expedite that and give him his fight license. Now, the problem is, a lot of people are not talking about this, but in January, Mr. Jones, whether he wins or loses, has a date with the Nevada State Athletic Commission in regards to these tests. So in theory, he could win tonight, be a UFC champion again. And then a few weeks later, the commission can come down on him and tell him he can't fight for 2 years.
And then he'd have to be stripped of the title.
But that's never happened before, Stevie. Come on.
Oh my God. And now let's bring up the fact that Daniel Cormier voluntarily relinquished the light heavyweight title to make tonight's main event a world title fight. No,
Yep.
Dude, no. There's no reason you should have relinquished the title. I know why you're doing it. You're doing it to stay in Dana White's good graces, to stay in the good graces of Endeavor, and so that you can still have your retirement fight for the heavyweight title. I get it. From a business standpoint, I'm not faulting Daniel Cormier for doing what makes good sense for him, for his life personally and professionally, and for the benefit of his family. He did what he thought was right for him to do. But from a sporting perspective, and I'm talking strictly about wins and losses actually meaning something in a real sport, there's no reason for him to relinquish the title knowing that John Jones is a cheater and you're basically handing it over to a guy who cheats.
I'm going to read what Daniel Cormier said yesterday in regards to this, the giving up of the title, the relinquishing of the title. He says, quote, "Being stripped of a title suggests you've done something wrong, and I haven't. I'd rather walk away this way. They can have it."
Well, that's because Daniel Cormier is a man of integrity, and he knows that he did nothing wrong, and he's not going to put up a fight over it. So, I get it from his point of view. I'm just talking about the fact that, as you said, going back just a few minutes ago, let alone a few weeks ago, you're rewarding a known cheater.
Yeah, absolutely. And you feel bad for the fans, you feel bad for the families of the fighters, the cornermen, everyone's lives have been basically uprooted. And those who can go to California are going. Those who aren't, well, tough.
Yeah, I guess you get a vacation in Las Vegas without getting to see any fights. Okay, here's another point that we haven't made yet, that if I may interject at this moment. You and I have bought tickets to many UFC cards. You and I have also covered UFC cards as reporters for various media outlets. You and I understand something from both sides of that equation. Card subject to change. We have gotten new main events for shows we were already traveling to. But you know what we didn't get? A show we were traveling to that got moved to another fucking state.
True.
Isn't that disrespectful to all of the press and all of the media that are going to cover it? Isn't that it's not just the fans that are getting screwed there. It's all of the media that would have to book new hotel rooms, new flights, rental cars, and transport all their gear on short notice.
Well, let's talk about the press, because there was a very notable altercation there.
Oh, my God. John Jones is so insufferable at this point that I cannot condone anybody paying money for this, whether it's in person with a ticket or pay-per-view, ordering it at home. His behavior at this press conference makes me think there is nothing positive about John Jones except for a drug test.
Well, being a reporter, you have to ask the tough questions, right?
Nobody in the room was willing to, except for one reporter from Sweden.
And John Jones basically told her to sit down.
He said, "You're stupid. Shut up. Next question." So she tried to direct her question to Dana White, and John Jones interrupted and said, "Can somebody throw her out?"
Well, the thing is, when Jones said, "Sit down," she responded,
"I am sitting down." Yeah, she was. Okay, this one I'm going to tell people because you and I, again, we understand this from the other side of the aisle, but maybe people don't. When you go to these press conferences, you're not standing the whole time. They put out rows of seats for the reporters, and some guy walks around with a microphone, and you raise your hand, and they hand the microphone to you. And unless they ask you to stand up so the fighter can see you, you can sit there with the microphone in your hand and ask your question.
And Jones was very defiant at the press conference and very,
combative.
Combative, that's a perfect word. Gustafson had a really good quote. He said, quote, "Whatever this guy is saying is bullshit."
Yeah, that's about the sum of it.
Now, when they did the stare down, we go John Jones, Mr. Defiant, becoming a petulant child. After the stare down, he grabs the belt from Gustafson. Or grabs the belt from Dana White, sorry. It's like, dude, no, you're not being funny here. This is just ridiculous. He's mugging it up for the cameras. And I hate to think what the odds are going into tonight's card, because I'm sure the odds have gone up and down like a yo-yo.
No, actually, they pretty consistently favored John Jones the whole time.
We know his intelligence isn't up there at times, because did you hear what he did on Twitter?
I'm pretty sure I did, but why don't you go ahead?
He asked the fans what his walkout music. Twitter, that's a softball down the middle of the plate, and you would believe the home runs that were hit on that article.
Oh, I have no doubt. This is like Donald Trump telling people to commend him on what a good job he's doing. The responses you're going to get to that are going to be epic.
Well, I mean, it was something where if you've been in social media for, let's say
5 minutes.
Yeah, we'll say 5 minutes. It's something where you know what to do, what not to do. You've heard the expression, "Don't feed the trolls."
Yeah, he fed them. You know what?
He fed them a buffet.
You know what I would say? My first suggestion for a walkout song?
Mm.
Insane in the membrane. Insane in the brain!
No, he got... Let me see if I can pull this up here. Yeah, here it is here. Okay, so we've got Huey Lewis in the News, "I Want a New Drug."
That's a good one, too.
Oops, I Did It Again.
That's also a good one.
Eddie Guerrero's "I Lie, I Cheat, I Steal."
That's pretty good.
Marilyn Manson's "I Don't Like the Drugs, but the Drugs Like Me."
That actually might be the winner right there.
No, it gets better. "Before He Cheats" by Carrie Underwood.
Nah.
The Verb, "The Drugs Don't Work."
Nah.
Rehab by Amy Winehouse. Viva Las Vegas.
Sorry, you still haven't gotten better than Marilyn Manson.
This is why I saved this one for last, Stevie. Dope Man by NWA.
See, I would either go with Dope Man or Insane in the Brain. One of the two.
I like Dope Man, but I have to tip my cap.
It was once said by a man who couldn't quit, "Dope Man, please, can I get another hit?"
So, I mean, at the end of the day, what we have is John Jones, who's failed 3 drug tests in the past, well, I'm going to be generous, say 6 months.
Mm-hmm. I don't
fighting
care.
For the light heavyweight title against the Mauler in California.
I don't care about this whole 1 gram smashed into 50 million pieces bullshit. Let's just call what it is exactly what it is. You shouldn't have 1 gram, let alone 1 in 50 million, let alone 1 in 10, let alone 1 in 1. If you're fighting clean, if you're honest, you should have 0.
I mean, when the news hit, I put this on our Facebook page. I just put the quote, the Daniel Cormier's tweet. He just wrote, "He cheated again!" ! That's basically all you need to know about this. He cheated again, and he's being rewarded.
And
it doesn't get any simpler than that.
And here's the thing with the whole, he's acting like a troll, he's trolling people, he's feeding the trolls. He probably thinks he's being a great villain. And everybody loves to have a great villain because you don't have a great babyface without a great heel. It's like Lex Luthor once said to Superman, "What are you without me?" You need evil for good to triumph over evil. But this is not a comic book. This is not pro wrestling. This is combat sports, where performance-enhancing drugs give you not only an unfair advantage, but make you damn near criminally liable, and in some cases actually liable, if you cause a man's death.
Well,
it's no longer cute. It's no longer a comic book story. He no longer gets to play, ha, look at me, I'm the bad guy. You hate me, don't you? It's gone beyond that.
For those who are wondering, he did make weight, so did the Mauler, so this is a title fight on Saturday night.
Yeah, the only person who missed weight out of this entire card, and it doesn't even matter because the fight is still taking place, was Brian Kelleher's opponent, Montel Jackson.
Yeah, I do want to mention a couple things before we wrap things up. Basically, John Jones has been stripped 3 times since 2015, and if the Nevada State Athletic Commission hits him down the hammer, it could be 4 times in 5 years. And
at what point does he get a lifetime ban from the sport? How long does this circus have to keep going on?
So, this is something I neglected to mention here because I had to double check to make sure I was reading it, because this whole story, there are certain things you have to check multiple sources because of the sheer stupidity of it. Remember how I said California gave him a license for the show?
Mm-hmm.
They didn't know that he failed those other tests this year.
Really? They didn't know about August and September?
Exactly. They were not informed.
Oh my God.
People are saying I've said before, he's getting rewarded. The dollar amount he's making for this one fight, and I think he should be giving a huge chunk of this to the other fighters. He's taking home for this one fight $500,000.
I heard, and I have not watched every embedded from start to finish, although I've added a few to the website. Mm-hmm. I've heard that in one of these embedded videos, John Jones walks around personally apologizing to the fighters. Yep. You know what? He should do more than that. He shouldn't just apologize. He should hand them a stack of $100 bills like, here you go, my bad, here you go.
So, I have one more question for you, Stevie. If he wins this fight, and, Cormier, by somehow he beats Lesnar, could you convince Cormier to have one final fight at heavyweight against John Jones?
No, it's not happening. He's already said he's retiring. Look, he's done everything he ever set out to do. He won the Strikeforce heavyweight title. He won the UFC heavyweight title. He won the UFC light heavyweight title. He's got a Hall of Fame career, and he's got a very fruitful life going forward as a coach and as a commentator. He is great on commentary. In fact, he's one of the best in the business, bar none, right now, just at calling fights, because he understands it from both sides. He understands it as a fighter, and he understands it as a fan, because this man loves combat sports. He loves pro wrestling. He loves mixed martial arts. He knows how to get emotionally invested and suck the viewers in and still talk about it on a technical level.
Well, I mean, you're right. I don't think that fight will happen. I don't think Cormier has anything to prove with one more fight with Jones.
No, he wants that one big payday with Brock Lesnar. He's been very clear about this. He's like, give me that fight, win or lose, give me that payday, and I'm done.
I just hope they don't cheer him when he walks to the cage for this fight, John Jones.
Yeah, well, that's the world we live in now, is bad guys are not bad guys. People love the bad guy. Scott Hall changed everything. Say goodnight to the bad guy.
Absolutely. And we'll be back on next week for a recap of the entire show. And we will we'll basically break down what's going to happen, the winners and losers, the knockouts, submissions, what have you. And we've got a busy calendar after a little bit of a lull in January. It's every weekend from mid-January till the end of March is a show every weekend.
Yeah, and in some cases, multiple shows. Like, Bellator is doing a couple of double headers during that time.
Yeah, and UFC, I checked the calendar, even has a show on Sunday between now and March.
Yeah.
So
we'll have no shortage of things to talk about,
So
but then again, we never do.
No, well, for Stevie J, I'm Peter H., the Hardcore Canadian. Thanks for listening to this special bonus podcast. And as I always say, never leave it to the judges.